Arthur.
Now that Galahad was dead, Lancelot was again the greatest knight. But he avoided the queen as much as possible, and in anger she sent him away. The seasons came and went. One night, Mordred, Arthur's son by his half-sister Morgause, arrived to tell Arthur that they had found Lancelot. He was nearby, and he was not alone. For Guinevere had also found him. She had been spending her days in his company. Mordred reminded Arthur, "The law says that adulterers should be burned at the stake. The queen must die, my lord, and so must Lancelot." Arthur reluctantly agreed, for he now knew that Guinevere had been lying to him. A trap was set. The next day, Guinevere, once again telling Arthur she was going out riding, went to meet Lancelot. Mordred and his men followed her. Lancelot escaped, but Guinevere was captured. She was tied to the stake, and the torches were lit, ready to set the pyre aflame. All of a sudden, Lancelot and his men came galloping from nowhere. He hacked at the ropes binding Guinevere, freeing her, and together they rode off. The lovers were soon found at Lancelot's castle in Wales. For months, Arthur's men laid siege to it. Many were killed, though neither side was victorious. Finally, after the dead were piled around and all were exhausted, it was agreed that Lancelot would go into exile in France, and Guinevere would return to Camelot with Arthur. Still dissatisfied and angry, Arthur decided to pursue Lancelot to France, leaving Mordred in charge. But soon, Arthur heard the news he dreaded. In his absence, Mordred had pronounced himself king and was claiming Guinevere as his queen. Arthur returned to Britain to save his kingdom. In a dream, Arthur was advised not to fight Mordred immediately, but to wait until reinforcements came. So Arthur sent a message of truce into Mordred's camp, and they met to discuss terms. During their talks, one of Mordred's men was bitten by an adder, and he drew his sword to kill it. When the two armies saw the light flashing on the drawn sword, a great shout arose on either side, and the final battle began. All day the battle raged, and by nightfall, Arthur and his faithful knight Sir Bedivere were the only knights left standing. Seeing Mordred, Arthur snatched up a spear and rushed towards him. In his haste, Excalibur and the magic scabbard slipped from his saddle as he drove his spear through his son's hateful heart. Mordred's sword cleaved Arthur's skull apart, and he lay dying. In his dying moments, Arthur asked Sir Bedivere to throw Excalibur back into the lake whence it came. The brave Arthur's body was borne from the battlefield. At the lakeside, out of the white mist came a barge, and in it were many fair ladies, all veiled in black. They carefully placed Arthur in the barge, and it moved off into the mist towards the Isle of Avalon. King Arthur was never seen again, but the belief endures that one day, in its hour of greatest need, Arthur, the once and future king, will return from Avalon to save the kingdom of Britain.
Ultimately, the Arthur story is a triangle story. It's the story that is, we still watch on our television screens in all forms. That this is a triangle story about a king and a kingdom collapse. It's not just a marriage, not just some disturbed children. Indeed, there are no children. But this is the end of civilization as we know it because of sexual passion. This is a simple story and a big story.
The Arthurian legend has a number of very strong patterned features that seem to stay no matter what happens. One is the hero himself, the fact that he comes out of mysterious circumstances. His birth is unusual in some extent. He rises to power in a kind of power vacuum. He demonstrates his perfectness for the job by pulling the sword out of the stone in the later text. He leads the whole of the society, the whole of his group, successfully in battle. But also I think it's part of human expectation that perfection is something we can't sustain for a long time. And Arthur, the hero, then disappears. He dies, he sleeps, he goes into the West.